So what do you guys want to do now?
Oh, hey, I know. Let's play finger bang. Bang, bang. I'm gonna finger bang you, Chris.
Not if I finger bang you first, Dad. Bang, bang.
I'm gonna finger bang the two of you at the same time. Bang, bang.
Hey, me too! Bang!
Oh, no one wants to get finger banged by you, Meg.
Why don't you just go do that to yourself, Meg?
Oh, yeah.
Prime Minister Mark Carney today met with his cabinet and then later the premiers, briefing them on U.S. trade talks after Trump imposed increased tariffs on Canada. Two of Carney's top ministers, meanwhile, are still in Mexico for their own meetings, discussing ways to strengthen ties as both countries deal with the fallout of Trump's trade war. Joining me now is François Phillipe-Champagne. He is the Minister of Finance. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start, as a result of these meetings, will Canada now collaborate on ways to challenge President Donald Trump through this trade war?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. We're calling directly from Mexico City. I would say that this was an overdue visit. You know, we share a lot with our Mexican friends. We wanted to re-engage. This was really about deepening and strengthening the relationship. I think it sent a strong signal when you have the foreign minister, the finance minister, who team up to come and meet the president, and actually a lot of the ministers. So I think it's really about Canada and Mexico. Listen, I was looking at some data. For example, if you look at the GDP of Canada and Mexico, and you were to combine these numbers, you get close to $4 trillion US dollar. That would put us like the fifth largest economy, half of the US population. So there's a lot we can do together. And I think it was the right time for us to re-engage with our Mexican friend. And you know what? We share what is happening on trade, but also there's a lot of things that we are exploring together on energy security, on infrastructure, on critical minerals. So it's about trade, but it's also in line with what the Prime Minister has said about diversification of our markets. And I think our Mexican friends are welcoming this visit very much.
Okay, you describe it as an overview visit at this point, but in the past, Mexico and Canada have had some very big challenges when it comes to the trading relationship. You'll remember this, I know for sure, during Donald Trump's first term, when those NAFTA renegotiations were taking place. Mexico actually signed the deal a month before Canada did. It put Canada in a really difficult position. And then since Donald Trump was reelected, we've seen some premiers and some prominent figures say, listen, Canada should just forget Mexico, go it alone, and focus on a bilateral agreement with the United States. Have those tensions at all played any factor in your conversations while you've been in Mexico?
Well, like I said, it's the right time to re-engage. We know that the USMCA, CUSMA, as we call it, in Canada, has provided significant benefits for both the United States, Canada, and Mexico. You know, that has made us more competitive as a trading bloc. You have to see that if you take the trading bloc as Canada, US, and Mexico, that's the second largest trading bloc in the world. So that's very significant. It has allowed for integrated supply chain. It has allowed for investments on either side of the border. And when you look at this agreement, which binds us together, one thing I would say to you, Katie, being here in Mexico City, one thing I've realized is that from the Canadian perspective, we've been focusing a lot on trade with the United States, which is somehow natural because of proximity, the depth of the market, and the integrated supply chain. But if you look a bit more south, there is also a lot of opportunities and possibilities when it comes to the Mexican market, when it comes to demand, when it comes to energy security. We know that Mexico needs more energy. They said, well, Canada is this reliable, predictable partner that we wish to have. Same thing on critical minerals. They also have an auto industry. They said, well, Canada could be, for example, a partner of choice when it comes to critical minerals. They need to build a lot of infrastructure and ports. They said, well, you have too. So there's a lot of commonality. And I think it's just the fact that what I would say, Katie, we probably have paid less attention that we should when it comes to exploring the Mexican market. And that's what we're doing really here, is really expanding the relationship, deepening these relationships, looking at opportunities on both sides. And I think it's very welcome. The Mexican government has been very kind to really make sure that we meet all the key players here in Mexico. And I think that's going to be to the benefit of Canadian industries and Canadian workers.
Canada and Mexico have taken very different approaches when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump in his second term here. Mexico did not retaliate when there was tariffs introduced on Mexico. Canada did retaliate, and we know that Mexico was given an extension to negotiate. Canada was not. I'm wondering, in hindsight, when you look at how Donald Trump has reacted to that, do you think, in hindsight, it was a mistake for Canada to put retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods?
Well, I would say it's always good to stand up for Canada. That was the right strategy then. It's the right strategy today. We stand up for workers, for industry, and I think it was noticed, like you said, the position of Canada. I'm not only in touch with our Mexican friends, but I'm in touch with our G7 partners. And, you know, when you're in Canada, we have a unique relationship with the United States of America. So you can't really compare what's going on, but we can learn from each other. First and foremost, because Canada buys more from the United States than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. We're the second largest investor in the United States after Japan. We have these integrated supply chain when it comes to steel, aluminum, the auto sector, forestry. So we are in a unique position. And then when you are in that unique position, you need to take time to do the right deal for Canada. There is no point of rushing. There is no point of being there and compromising when you need to explore all opportunities that we have to deal with our American colleagues. And that's why I say when I compare the position of Canada today with a lot of our partners around the world, I think the Prime Minister yesterday was clear when he said about 85% of goods are crossing the border to the United States under the CUSMA agreement that we have, tariff-free. So that's a position that I would say we have achieved by standing up, and I think Canadians are really with us on that, Katie. I would say when I see people in the street, they say, "Listen, you know, you need to stand up. You need to be strong. You need to be constructive. You need to be at the table. You need to negotiate, obviously, but don't rush. Make sure you get the best deal for Canada, our workers, and our industry." And I think our trading partners around the world recognize that when you look at the facts, you realize that the Canadian position, although we have sectors which are really affected, you know, you think about forestry, you think about our steel workers, the aluminum sector, the auto sector, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of uncertainty. And what we're trying to do is to negotiate the best possible deal for Canada, but that may take some time. And I think people understand that, you know, what we want is the right deal for the country, because we have this unique position when it comes to our relationship with the United States of America.
And that's a thing here. I think it's a nuanced question. I don't think that this is, I think that in this moment in Canada, we've seen among the population that there is support for Canada to stand up to the United States. But again, I just want to make sure I understand correctly. You're standing by Canada's decision to retaliate, even as Donald Trump has made an example of Canada by increasing tariffs first. There are some carve-outs there. Again, it's a nuanced thing. Even though Canada was punished first and faces an increase in tariffs before anyone else, you stand by that decision to impose retaliatory tariffs on the United States.
But that's what we did. And as you know, you always have to look at your position. You need to focus on your interest and what's the long-term interest of Canada. And the Prime Minister was clear to say, you always need to reassess the strategy to make sure that it serves the best interest of Canada. Your question was at the time, is standing up for Canada the right strategy? Always. How you do that? Well, that evolves over time. You know, when we started, I think we said we would impose this retaliatory tariffs. I think that the negotiation has evolved. The Prime Minister was clear to say we always have to look at things that would be in the best interest to protect our centers, our sectors and our workers. But I think that the how is something that we are continuously looking at. We're learning also from our trading partners, you know, those who have somehow reach arrangements or deals with the United States of America. But when I look at where we are today, so my point, Katie, to your question is that when I look at where Canada is today, I think that the strategy has been the right one. Now, obviously, as you go forward, you always have to measure what you're doing in order to get the best possible outcome for Canadian workers and Canadian industry. And part of that is also engaging with trading partners like Mexico, for example, which is part of that USMCA arrangement, because a decision on one side of the border would have an impact on both. So I think it is smart to have this ongoing dialogue, as we have with our trading partners in the G7 and beyond, and really think that although our situation is slightly different from Mexico, we are still under the same trading arrangement, and this trading bloc is one which is very important for obviously Canada, but also for Mexico.
Last question I want to ask you really quickly as we're running out of time here. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, yesterday suggested that he's looking at ways to reduce tariffs on the United States, those retaliatory tariffs. Should Canadians expect that some of the tariffs targeting American goods are going to come off, and what can we expect around that?
Well, I think the Prime Minister has been expressing is that the strategy that we have adopted over the long term, because, you know, this has started not only yesterday, but this has been ongoing. What the Prime Minister said is that you always have to look at your strategy and say, how is that helping Canadian workers, Canadian industry, and Canadian position, I would say, at the negotiating table. And I think that's right. I mean, Canadians are with us. They understand that this is complex negotiation. They see that Canada still has a preferential treatment when it comes to trade with the United States. They are looking at the next steps. And I think what the Prime Minister was expressing is that this is a very much all hands on deck, looking at what we can do next to further our interest, and but not to put also artificial deadlines. And I think that was very smart. You know, these artificial deadlines are not what we need. What we need is to have constructive dialogue, and I want to see Minister LeBlanc has been in Washington.
But sir, if I may jump in really quickly, and I'm super not trying to be rude, can we expect more tariffs to come off soon? Do you expect that? Should we expect to see that?
Listen, I'll let the Prime Minister, who's you know, in charge ultimately of making the decision as to how to best adapt our strategy when it comes to negotiation with the United States. But you know what he expressed yesterday is that as you look at your at the options that we have in front of us, we always assess these options to get the best possible outcomes for our workers and our industry. And obviously that's the job of those of us who are at the front line and with the Prime Minister to make these calls in a very fluid and complex dynamic of negotiation with the United States. One thing that Canadians have seen, because our American colleagues have we have seen what happened with other countries. It's been very public. I think people have a level of appreciation to see it's complex and that we're fighting for them every step of the way. And then in that sense, you have to assess your strategy as you go along.
Minister Champagne, thank you for your time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.